This is a really interesting session about how what happens at a larger enterprise when skills really are distributed and there are many development teams wanting to use skills. It really poses kind of different challenges at a larger organization. So John Groetzinger, who's a principal engineer at Cisco, will be presenting this. I actually presented with John a little while earlier at Cisco Live down in Amsterdam. So it gives me great pleasure to welcome John on stage. So please give it up for John.
Thanks, Simon. All right, so hopefully everyone can hear me back there. So again, the title here is about skills and putting them everywhere, and really putting pipelines around that so you don't have to maintain multiple versions of context in various places, because again, at the end of the day, both humans and agents really need to consume this context. So I'm going to kind of talk about some things we've been struggling with and some patterns we've used internally at Cisco. So this might be a little controversial for some people here, especially maybe if you work for a frontier model, maybe earmuff it, but you don't really need a smarter model today. The models are perfectly capable of doing what you need for business value, right? I'm not talking like PhD level intelligence and beyond, but getting business value out of the models, it's already there today. The problem is really that you need smarter context and smarter context engineering. And so for me, the last couple of years, I've been jumping harness to harness. I'm always chasing the latest, greatest thing, constantly breaking my workflows. I'm sure other people can relate to this. And always, there's so many variables that anytime I switch to like a lower model and it breaks something, I'm immediately like, well, that's the model's fault. I'm going back to Opus, right? Because this thing that I don't understand has to be the model, right? But once skills came onto the scene, it kind of changed my perspective on things, especially recently with the new patterns of agentic fan out in the harness, right? Where I have my model set to Opus, and I ask it to do this massive prompt, and it spawns 15 sub-agents, and that cost is just really increasing. And we're actually seeing that becoming actually a concern where we have to start limiting model use in our large enterprise because of the cost of this stuff and the agentic fan-out being a problem. So I really wanted to figure out, okay, why can't I just use Sonnet for everything? And I found out I can. And today, for the last couple of months, I largely use the medium tier model. It doesn't really Sonnet, GPT medium reasoning. I don't really use those high-end models. It's very rare that I use those. Maybe for some super complex planning, lots of context, I still use them. But I challenge my engineers to really try to use that medium tier as their baseline, right? And only jump into the greater tier when they need to. And the real unlock for this was skills, because all the harnesses, all the models are training on skills, they're honoring skills, and so if you can lean into that, your context can actually transfer between the harnesses. And that was great for me because I can try Claude Code, I can jump into Devin, I can jump into GitHub Copilot CLI. And if my skills work in all three of them, relatively it works the same. So, it's great. But what you need to understand is how do you manage your context, right? How do you share it, package it once, and then ship it to everyone, but only have one source of management? And the real unlock for that is evals. Evals are extremely important, and you need to make sure that you're actually spending engineering effort learning how to build evaluations for your context. And what you'll find is, if you do that correctly, you can actually use extremely low-end models, and your workflows become much more deterministic, especially for things that are repetitive, that you need to do all the time. Right? I don't think anyone in this room, if I went to them and I said, hey, you can use Opus and do this workflow, or you can use Haiku, and one's way faster and way cheaper, but you get the exact same result. I mean, which one are you going to choose, right? It's a no-brainer. No one's going to choose the more expensive, slower model just because, right? If you actually figure out how to do that optimization, you're going to go with the cheaper, faster one. So the stories that I'm going to tell today stem from kind of that journey. Two completely different teams. One is more of a traditional context already exists that humans maintain. How do we convert that into something agents can maintain without reinventing it or having complete drift in the two systems? And then the second one is more developer-centric, where everything we do should be more skill-based going forward and kind of being the starting point. So before we go too deep in, just a little background on myself. My name, John Groetzinger, and I've been in Cisco for about 14 years now. Actually came in through an acquisition of a company called SourceFire. We wrote intrusion prevention software. It's still one of the core technologies in Cisco's firewall today, right? And so I spent about 12 years in the TAC, which is our Technical Assistance Center, technical support for enterprise customers. I'd be dealing with very high-pressure situations, financial institutions, banks, hospitals, critical infrastructure. When that goes down, I'd be the kind of person figuring out how do we get them up quickly, And I really want to automate that because those are very annoying situations, right? And so I've been a full stack developer for the last 12 to 14 years, but the last 2 to 5 years, there's a lot of edge cases that you can't handle in automation, right? Easily, anyway. And AI kind of changed that a lot, right? I really got excited. I was like, oh man, these 50 edge cases I don't have to hard code if-elses for. I can just throw it to an agent and with some context, and it actually handles that quite well. And then for the last year or so, I've been focused heavily on production agentic system. We just released a couple weeks ago GA. We have a fully AI native platform built from the ground up to be AI native. It's customer external facing. We have over 1,000 users onboarded in just a few weeks, and it's been that's where these stories are actually coming from. Is shipping production agents. Okay, so let's take a step back, and hopefully everyone knows what a skill is. If not, you probably haven't been paying attention over the last couple of days. And so I really hope you have. But at a core of it is it can be very simple or it can be very complex, which is nice. It's flexible. But the bare minimum is just you have that skill.md that just is like your starting point for your agent. And so one skill, for example, that I've created for our team is a repository standard, because we have tons of technical debt. We have people creating new projects all the time on using models that are trained on stuff that's not quite up to date, right? So if I say, create me a new Python project, it pumps out a requirements.txt with a pip install, and I go insane because I only want people using UV, right? And so I put that into the skill so I don't have to have my engineers worry about like setting up projects the wrong way. They just install the skill and set up the project with the agent, right? So that's just one example. That's an easy win, right? So you want to make your skill ship with rules, which is essentially just more markdown files. You can put scripts in there, any scaffolding you want. It can really be as advanced as you want. But what's key is that you add evaluations for your skills, right? Define the bare minimum that you expect this skill to always help with and always do it well. And so as you increase, improve the skill or you add more to it, you don't want that old functionality to break, right? So you need to focus on what is the core stuff that should always do well. It's going to handle those other edge cases decently well, and you can update the evals as those come up. Now, these are not really case studies. This is not like, hey, you must go do this. This is the way forward. These are really just some patterns we've tried, because again, one team is a development shipping team. We have extremely tight deadlines because our executive leadership says, you have AI now, you can deliver way more features just as fast, right? Is that the world we live in? Not quite, but that is the expectation that we live in. So we don't really have time to engineer our workflows day to day, unfortunately. I wish we did. And then our support teams, same thing. They're under a lot of pressure, have high severity cases coming in. They really have to figure out, how to spend their time on focusing on the customers, not really optimizing their day to day. So a lot of anecdotal stuff in here, but these are just some patterns I wanted to share that might be useful for you guys. So story number one comes from the support team, right? And if you have an existing platform of content for humans, how do you take that and make it usable for agents? It's kind of the first story. So in Cisco TAC, we have a very strong culture around our knowledge base, right? It's something we instill in our culture because engineers are constantly shifting out. The real value comes from that experience. I helped this customer with this really complicated problem. There's other ones that are definitely going to have the same problem. Let me write that down so the next engineer doesn't have to suffer like I did, and the customer doesn't have to wait as long for a solution. It's just ingrained in our culture. So we really wanted to lean into how do you leverage that, which is highly curated, high quality content, but feed it into an agent system. I think some of the first things we tried were just give an MCP tool to search the HTML, pull in the docs, and let the agent figure it out. Didn't really work so well. There were wins here and there, but there were a lot of hallucinations and stuff that just didn't make sense. Because there is still stale content in our knowledge-based system, right? Not every article is up to date. So you really need to pay attention to which ones you let the agent consume. So 2 engineers that have been kind of working on this for 2 years, a couple months ago, created a platform that converts our art articles, which are kind of handpicked, doesn't just blindly take every article and shove it into this agent system, but highly quality articles that people are actually actively maintaining, get converted into skills, and then we build evaluations for that, right? So think customer opens a case, they have a problem description. We go through 3 weeks of collecting logs and figuring out how to fix the problem, and then finally we fix it, right? Why did it take 3 weeks, right? How can we cut that time down into just going from like description to solution on the first day, right? And you'll write an article to kind of help with that. And then we give it to our agent so it can kind of automate that even more. Now, how many people here have actually written this skill? Everyone? Most hands up? Okay. Now, how many people have written those skills? How many write them by hand? Do you write your skills out by hand? All right, a few people. Stop doing that. The skill is not for you. The skill is for your agent. So it's good to have human docs, but skill, is for agents, right? You should not really care what is inside the skill, the context itself. What you should care about is the outcome that comes out of using the skill with the agent. So where your human spends the time, that is your most precious resource, is your humans validating your taste, the quality, what actually matters. That's the eval, and then the initial KB. The stuff in the middle, let the agent do it for you. Let LLMs do it for you. Even better, if you want a smaller model to do this workflow, let the small model build the skill for itself. Found a lot of anecdotal success in doing that, where it's just kind of like, hey, well, this is for you. How do you want to organize this information so you can be more efficient with it? Just put that in a pipeline, have the output quality as an eval, and you can kind of verify if it's working or not based on that. So a lot of people will say, wikis are where docs go to die. And of course, largely I do agree with that because people just don't really maintain docs. But when you have a strong culture like we do, our docs are not really dying. We're actually seeing the opposite. Our docs are becoming more important to ground the agents. But what we're seeing is that a lot of people are building agentic systems that blindly try to use any content, or they'll have agents that build their own memories on supporting stuff using that, and then the memories drift from the content, and then you end up having some answer come out to a customer, and that's just completely unaligned with the article that it says it used as a source, and then everyone just loses faith in the entire system, right? And that's the problem we've been struggling with for the last couple of years. So we're trying to figure out how do we keep these more in sync in a way that we can actually trust it. And that's what the system that these engineers built is that when the article changes, we kind of pipeline that, right? Think of like a GitHub action triggering when we update a knowledge base article. That goes into a pipeline with an LLM that reviews the changes, determines if it's a minor change, moderate, major, and then makes the change for itself to update its skill. And then it runs the evals. If the evals pass, great, everything's good. If it's a minor change, just changing a typo or wording and the evals pass, I don't really need to have my human gate that new version, right? Just let it automatically release. But if you're doing a more complex change, a major change, maybe you're introducing a new topic, maybe that's something that you need some more quality control, and that's where you insert your human, right? Your humans either go far on the left or far on the right, but in between, you should not be wasting your time. You should not be caring about a text diff. If your engineers are reviewing text diffs on a skill, you are wasting a lot of time that is just unnecessary, at least in my experience. So, new topic means new eval. Right? You need to build a new evaluation. Of course, you can let the LLM do that, but you need to really tell it what success looks like in order for it to build a good evaluation, right? Okay, so that's story number one. Now, story number two is a little bit more complex, and it's more probably relatable to everyone in the room because it's developer focused. And so this is a concept of just how do you instill that culture of skill first, context engineering into your engineering teams? And that was something that we kind of did on our team, building this new agent platform. And so I'm going to kind of share that story here. And so to talk a little bit about the complexity and the environment we're working in, I want to tell you a little bit about the system we built first. So the one that we released a few weeks ago that I mentioned earlier, this AI native platform. It's a multi-agent orchestration system. Of course, we have a central orchestrator. We don't call it an orchestrator because we're Cisco. It's a router. It's a semantic router, of course, right? So we have our semantic router. It routes to multiple agents. But on these 8 specialist agents, that's just what we have today. And we're already building 10 more this quarter, right? And that's constantly growing. So those are owned by different development teams. Some of them are owned by different organizations. But all of this goes into one single platform. So the customer gets one single unified interface. They have different apps and different pages they can navigate in there. There's whole pipelines and databases behind each of those apps. And each of them comes with their own agent. But we don't expose that kind of complexity to the customer. That would be annoying. They have one AI assistant that they can talk to everywhere. We have AI buttons embedded everywhere. Some are static buttons that are directly routed to an agent to help them. But then we have freeform chat as well. So if I'm sitting on the configuration best practice app and I ask it what TAC cases I have open, it shouldn't go to the configuration agent. It should go to the cases agent. And our system works well for that. The only way we were able to ship that with confidence is because we did heavy evaluations, and we have a strong engineering culture around that now that we had to build, right? And so that was something that I was actually tasked with, was figuring out how do we evaluate this stuff. I got the goal of saying, hey, you're going to give the go or no go on if this is actually going to be good enough to ship, because I think a lot of people are stuck in the POC phase. So we need to be very confident that we're not going to release something that's just terrible, right? We've seen all the disasters, people having agents sell them a car for $1, right? We don't need that bad PR. We really needed to be confident about this. So I kind of came up with this framework for testing, right? We use a lot of LangChain and LangGraph and LangSmith for observing our agents. which has a good eval culture. But the typical way that you create evals and data sets today isn't really aligned with what I wanted, because I really wanted to be able to compare all the environments, right? So when you build an agentic platform, your signals really come from your traces. You should ship early, monitor it, and then adjust based on what you're observing, how people interact with it. Because when you have a free-form chat, people can ask anything, right? So you can't really predict what the people are going to ask. Kind of just got to let them do it, right? So you're going to be constantly pulling evals from production data and then figuring out, oh, that's a question they asked, did not go well, went to the wrong agent. Even if it went to the right agent, maybe that gave a bad answer. I want to build an evaluation for that because it's something we want to support. Now, if I pull in this new eval and I run it on my local laptop and I get it all working, okay, great. That likely resulted in some sort of prompt change, some sort of tool update, whatever it may be. What else did that break to fix this one thing, right? That's the loop we constantly see. I'm chasing this current bug. I don't even know what that breaks when I change the prompt. Without evals, you won't, right? And so I had to figure out, okay, how do we actually do this more unit test style, right? As an enterprise, if you've ever scaled up software, unit testing is absolutely essential. Evals are the same in this world of agentic. They are the unit test for your agents. And so building this concept, simple things, I wanted basic data set schemas, everyone to use kind of that same baseline schema, and storing that with the repository, right? So the data set stored with the code. Now, typically a data set is in JSON format, right? And usually a JSON is just a single line file, right? So when an agent reads it, if you have 1,000 examples in there, it's just this massive context that it explodes. So immediately I said, okay, we need to switch. Everyone needs to be using JSON-L instead of JSON. So then each example for each eval is an individual line. Your coding agent can make more precise edits on the data set. Because again, we're not hand curating data sets. We absolutely don't have time for that. Everyone has a coding agent, and it's basically updating the data set. We need to make that more efficient. This is something I've learned that I would instill into this skill that I'm going to talk about. I wrote a script so this can work basically against your local laptop dev staging. The same exact eval, same exact code works in any environment because it's very simple. Traditionally, when you have a unit test, you import the function, you pass in whatever input you're testing, and then you verify the output, right? Agents are no different. When you have this kind of black box evaluation, you can do the exact same thing. However, what happened in the middle, you might actually care about as well, right? And so you can actually observe that stuff in a platform like Langsmith or any system observability system. That's what our eval code actually runs against, right? So we don't import, right? Not like a Python import. Our evals don't work like that. They get an endpoint, right? And we point our evaluation code at the endpoint to invoke the agent. Answer comes back out. We check the observability system. Did it call the tools we expected it to call with the right parameters? Did it, spend roughly the amount of tokens that we expected it to spend? What was the latency on this based on when we ran it last time, right? You got to have a baseline for all this stuff built into your evals. So all of this is what I'm trying to basically teach all of my globally distributed team, and just basically had like a week or two to basically introduce this concept to 8 different teams distributed around the world. What options do I have? Get one meeting and get everyone on it that they can just not pay attention to? I mean, let's be honest. What meeting is anyone going to pay attention to for an hour of me yapping at them about testing? No developer cares about this. It's another complex problem. Testing is not exciting, right? It's not exciting work. Engineers don't get excited about it. So you got to do it for them as much as you can. How do you plug it into CI? How do you make it environment aware? Right? How do we do the data set schema? All these things we want a consistency around with, again, hundreds of engineers distributed around the world. So my thought was, okay, a meeting's not going to work. We have a little bit of time, but everyone has a coding agent in these development teams, the actual developers. Why don't we make a skill, and then I can just have everyone install the skill, and the agent can build the evals for them. So that was basically the theory, and it ended up working quite well. So the plugin that I built, has our basic skill MD, has a bunch of examples, scripts, example evaluations. Basically, I spent a lot of time doing this really well with one single agent to basically figure out all these good patterns. And then I had my agent distill that down into a skill, basically explaining, hey, everything that we just created here, can you make a skill for yourself for other people with coding agents to be able to do the exact same thing? And so that's what came out. The agent kind of built the skill for me. We iterated it with versions, right? And I shared it slowly with one team, got some feedback on day 1, day 2, another team, day 3, everybody, right? And so teams just kind of installed it, They ask their coding agent, hey, do this thing that I don't care about that John wants me to do, and I have a Jira ticket due by the end of the week for, right? Their agent just kind of did it for them. And by the end of the week, every agent team kind of had a data set done the same way, similar metrics, right? Because before this, if we just told 8 teams to go build evaluations for their agents, I mean, what do you think would have happened, right? We would have had massive inconsistency. If I want to go help some other team, I understand, oh, their metric 0 to 10, and 10 means good. This team did 0 to 5, and 5 means bad. And this team did 0 to 1. Like, that is just something, we have to speak the same language and engineer towards the same goal. And a skill can really help you kind of do that. So that's what I really wanted. Everyone contribute to this framework, and we install it as a skill, we version it, and everyone kind of ships it together. So that was essentially the theory and what it worked. There was one problem that happened, is that the management would then come to me, my boss or whoever, and they would say, hey, what's the update on that evaluation framework? So-and-so said they liked it. Can you show me what you did? And I was like, oh yeah, you can just ask your coding agent. Oh, you don't have one of those because you're a manager. So that was a problem immediately. And I was like, okay, there's still a gap here. But I wanted a very simple solution for this because again, my immediate reaction or anyone's might be, all right, we use Confluence, Wiki, whatever. I'll go put a document that explains this eval framework that I built, and then I'll never update it and it'll drift, right? So I didn't want that. So the concept is really just everything is in the repository. The skill is obviously backed by Git. It's in a repo. Publish it to a registry like Tessel, but you maintain it in a Git repository that's version controlled. And you have a skill.md for an agent, and then you have a readme MD for a human, right? Very simple. You can use an AI coding agent to kind of update both. But you as the human are kind of just validating the README, and the skills for the agent, and you have evals that make sure that works, right? But not everyone gets on Git either. A lot of our managers are not even in Git. They operate solely in like Jira and Confluence. So I can't explain to 100 managers, go make an account on GitHub. And no, you got to put this in Confluence. So there's really cool open source tools. You can build your own script to basically convert that README that's in the project directly to just ship that to Confluence, right? You make a doc, think hashtag 1 in Markdown becomes H1, right? It's a very simple, very deterministic conversion. Don't have an LLM, just update Confluence. I mean, you can do that too, but it's kind of token heavy. Just have your agent write a deterministic script to sync that Markdown into a pretty HTML file that everyone in that other system uses. And that was it, and that was all I did. So now when someone asks me for, hey, can you tell me about that agent framework, or they just ping me on WebEx and ask me, where can I get information about this? I send them just a link to that Confluence doc, which is a direct one-to-one map of the README from the repo. And so there's no drift. So what my agents are reading, what their managers are reading, is all the same content. And it's all maintained in one place. And that was really just a very productive unlock, and it worked really well. And so the cultural shift that I really have to instill in my team was asking first, is this a skill, right? So, someone asks on a WebEx message like, hey, new engineers onboarding today. Where's the DevOps information? How do I get access to the Kubernetes cluster, right? It's not really, that is sometimes the question. And when I see that, I say, no. Go ask, do we have a skill that explains this so I can install it in my agent? That needs to become the default reaction, right? And that's a cultural shift you have to actually intentionally kind of engineer and kind of distill down to your team. And so that's kind of our default now that we're operating at is like, hey, does anyone have a skill for this? If not, we create one together and we maintain it together. Again, I don't want 15 engineers creating 15 skills for the same thing, especially with this world of the token budget becoming a problem. That's just extremely wasteful engineering, right? We should all be trying to share when we can. We have coding agents. There's no reason that we can't really all work together and have our agents maintain it. As long as we have evals that define what the behavior should be, this is actually much easier than it sounds. Okay, so what do you do when you go back to work Monday, or maybe tomorrow, whatever, at least me, I'm going back Monday. But you want to just start small. You don't need to go build some crazy robust platform like we did. That came from like 2 years of us beating our head off a wall, right? So engineers really wanted something more robust. But you don't have to start there. Start with one workflow, one concept, one thing that you find yourself explaining over and over to different audiences, and just turn that into a skill or a package, whatever you want to call it, but really at the end of the day, an agent skill. And really just give thought to, okay, who are the audiences? What platforms do they operate on? Can I maintain the README here and sync to those registries or whatever it is? That should be kind of your objective. Add evaluations. That is key. If you don't do that, it's just going to fall apart. So make sure you define the bare minimum. What do I expect this skill to actually help people with? And how do I actually validate that? That's it. Just give a little thought to that up front. It'll go a long way, and you can kind of compound on that over time. And then, of course, start sharing it. But you don't want to just share, with everyone right away. Kind of use it yourself first. This is like the 0.0.x version of the context, right? You really do want to kind of semantically version your skills and your context to give signal to your engineers consuming it, right? Because if I go look at a skill and it's version 1.0, I expect it to do exactly what it's supposed to do on the first try with almost no friction, right? And if it doesn't do that, you've lost my trust, right? So signify that with your versioning. How mature is that actually, right? So start with version 0.0. Share it with a few, get some feedback, iterate. Once it's becoming a little more stable, maybe 0.x, right? And then finally, once you've shared it with a lot more people and it's regularly, like people are like, man, this is working great for me, that's a good signal to move it to version 1, right? And then that gives everyone else a signal, hey, you can consume this, here's what the skill does, I promise it'll work because it's battle tested and evaluated. So takeaways here, again, our agent architectures, they change every day. You'll have a new one next week, next month, you really can't predict that. But your context is your durable investment, right? Really spend time on how you context engineer and maintain things in one place, but distribute that to multiple systems to keep them in sync. That's really where you want to spend your time. And just build your pipelines today, because everything else is definitely going to change on you anyway. So hopefully this was useful information for everyone. And thank you for listening to me yap for a while.
Thank you, John. Thank you very much. We have a few minutes.
Yep.
If anyone has any questions, shout, and I don't know, not throw the microphone at you, because health and safety and all that.
Hi, thanks for the talk. Are the skill.md and the readme.md that come out very different?
Yeah, to be honest, they're probably like 80% similar in most cases. The README and skill look very similar. I'll usually start with the skill for the agent, and I'll say, can you document this in a README? And if I have questions, I kind of update it. But honestly, they're very, very similar, which feels wasteful. But again, the LLM's maintaining it, so it's not really like that much extra to maintain. But they're very similar in my experience.
Hi there. Nice for the talk. I'm just right here. So my question is around when you scale kind of like having like a multiple skills. I think you've been in this journey like starting with a few skills, but now I'm assuming that you have maybe hundreds of skills. How would you like orchestrate and make sure like the end user find the right skill when it is needed, when it is distributed, as you said?
So you're asking how to maintain like, or kind of prevent like skill explosion, right? Is that kind of the question? I don't know if I followed exactly what you're asking.
So the state that you're already in, or you would get to, is you would have multiple skills, and then the end user is looking to do one task and require like one or two skills. How do you orchestrate that end user to pull the right skill when it is needed? Oh, right. So, I mean, we for our development team, we're actually using Tesla, which kind of helps with that, and they have kind of a server that helps you search your skills. But figuring out how to index your skills so they're searchable by an agent generally is the answer. How you do that kind of depends on what your tooling is being used. But you can put them all in one GitHub repository, and then you can have your agent have access to that, and then it can just grep for the skills that it needs. I mean, that's a simple solution you can do today with almost no effort, right? But if you need something more robust, then you have to kind of look to more robust systems.
Okay, you actually just answered my first question. Do you store your skills in a GitHub repo or something, rather than per project? And then I guess it sounds like it's a GitHub repo, like separate from the projects, correct?
Yes, correct. We have, like each engineering team kind of has their own skills repo, and I'll give access to that. But yes, we have one repo for like all of our team skills, and we maintain it there.
So how do you go about evaluating, like, when a skill needs to get updated or something? Does that then become a few engineers all coordinate, or is everyone free to like put in a pull request to update the skill? Because I mean, obviously you don't want everyone's drift, influencing the context for all of your engineers.
Yeah, so evaluations are honestly the answer to that. We do let anyone submit PRs to the skills. We treat it just like we would a shared library, right? So if you go in with that mentality, this is a shared library, you cannot break functionality for other people. How do you validate that? The evaluations need to cover it, right? So if there's something in the skill that you care about, build an evaluation for it. Every time you update the skill, make sure that evaluation passes. It's not any different than a shared library with unit testing. And if you think of it that way, it is that simple, but you have to give a little more thought to how you build your evals, because it's just a little more complicated with the non-deterministic nature of LLMs, but conceptually it's the same.
Wonderful. I think there's no more questions, unless there are any last minute. Oh, one down the front here. Thank you. 1 minute. Go.
Yeah, thank you for the talk. That was really good. Is there anywhere we can go to read more into evals? I presume the Cisco one isn't one we can use today. Or does that end up just being a skill you write, for example?
I mean, I'm certainly happy to talk to you one-on-one about it. I could talk about evals all day. So, if you want to find me afterwards, I'm happy to chat about it, for sure.
I'm a TDD advocate, so it's right up my alley.
Yeah, sure. Just come find me after the talk.
Sweet. Thank you very much. Another round of applause for John. Thank you.